All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here in this conversation with Sara Al-Amiri. On the 15th of August, 2010, I walked into a small building in Al Khwanij and started my very first day at the Emirates Institution for Advanced Science and Technology, better known today as the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. And after a quick tour, I was taken into a room and given a desk, and right next to my desk was a very quiet and humble software engineer, and that was Sara. So that was the very first time I met Sara Al-Amiri. Sara Al-Amiri at the time was a software engineer working on developing the software of the ground system for Dubai-Sat 1, which was later on used for mission control and to operate Dubai-Sat 1. After that, she started to work on the software, on the flight software of Dubai-Sat 2, and I think about a year and a half in, Sara's, there was some restructuring at the Emirates Institution for Advanced Science and Technology, and Sara was chosen to head, for the very first time, the research and development section there. And she excelled, and she started to build these functionalities that didn't exist at the time at the center, those very important support units for the core of what the center was doing. From the research and development section came the strategic research. What we have today at the center is strategic research, the product assurance, which is critical for all our space missions, the knowledge management section, the logistics and others. And then she moved on to develop our first diversion from space, which is the high-altitude pseudo satellites, which was basically a drone that flies into the stratosphere and combines what satellites and drones do. And Sara was a very key player in developing the initial concept of the Mars mission, and she was later assigned as the science lead, one of the most important teams within the Mars mission. And up until recently, or very recently, she was appointed as the head of the UAE Council of Scientists. I saw. So since my earliest memory of Sara, she has really stood out as a true leader in the field. Her work was very critical for the progression and continuous development of the Space Center. But it was a great privilege to watch Sara grow as the center grew and developed. Now, Sara, I hope you're uncomfortable enough for me to ask the first question.
Yeah, you know exactly how to make me uncomfortable, so that's a great start to the session.
All right, so how about we start with a simple question. Why science? Why is this important? What is important about what the Space Center does?
To start off, why science? To me, and I think to everybody that knows anything about science, is that it's the fundamentals of the development of technology. It's fundamentals of the development of everything that we sometimes take for granted today. It always started in the sciences, in the basics of understanding, and then it evolved into technologies and what we have. I'd like to also stress on both science and technology. When we're talking about science and technology, and we're continuously talking here about a knowledge economy, of getting off oil, of having more diverse economy. Science and technology is actually the basis of such an economy. It provides the underlying framework for developing in any sector and for expanding in any sector. So. For me, just growing that sort of sustains UAE as a country, and it solidifies it in the global platform.
Excellent. And so with your recent assignment to the UAE, as the head of the UAE Council of Scientists, could you explain to us what the role of the council is and how the council will play a role in developing the science and technology sector in the UAE.
The recent changes for Southern government, just to comment on that, was quite a remarkable shift between on the role of government and the understanding of what governments need to do for the people and need to do for the development of the country. A lot of the changes that came together, and one most notable one, and I think the one that at the time I was quite happy came about is establishing a council of scientists, establishing that body that provides the link between everyone that's working the sciences in furthering the technologies and the government to provide the feedback on its policies, the feedback on what actually works on it, and can actually take the next step on working on developing and the right environment for scientists to flourish in, and the right environment for technologists and researchers to flourish in, and to provide them with all the necessary tools that they require to grow in that field. From there, apart from reviewing policies and so on, I think it is the incentive of the council to start developing the next generation of scientists and to provide them with opportunities and the groundwork for them to have a deep root within the economy in different sectors when it comes to sciences.
All right, so recommend policies and make sure that the right environment exists for the science and
Yes.
technology sector to grow. Having said that, now I did mention your background as a software engineer, and your progression and your eventual specialization in functionality and capacity building, but you are not a scientist. So how do you see yourself leading the council and bringing about that change you spoke about?
I'm actually quite glad that you pointed that out, that I'm not a scientist. And I have no problem with saying that. I am an engineer by profession, and like you said, I develop capabilities and capacity in things that didn't exist. I take you a step back to the development of the UAE prior to actually going and answering your question. The UAE started off in the 70s with relatively nothing. All the sectors there was no properly developed economy. It was not a country, and the country existed at the end of 1971. The steps that we're taking in developing all the necessary infrastructure in the country, developing the education sector, developing the health sector, they all started from nothing. And they all started with people that know how to develop these sectors, and they started with the people that could provide the necessary backbone for developing these sectors and provide the necessary tools for people to come forward. And we come to a generation now of people that are, for example, highly trained medical professionals, highly trained educators that are furthering that sector forward. To come back to your question and perhaps provide an understanding of what we do at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. What is the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center about, and how it was created? It was created with the initiative about 10 years ago, with the initiative of developing the science and technology sector for the government of Dubai and for the UAE in general. What we worked towards constantly is to develop new things, develop new initiatives, and be the first in that sector and the first in developing technology in that sector. We went down the path of not purchasing things, first off, designing our own systems and developing our own systems. We also went down the path of developing people and developing the right infrastructure, so providing them with the right environment, and I'm talking about environment in terms of culture, so a culture that is very conducive of research and development, a culture that's very conducive of asking questions and finding ways of answering them, and then the necessary actual physical tools and buildings and cleaner facilities that they require to get their jobs, to answer their questions and to get their jobs done. And another point is to provide them with the necessary backgrounds and the necessary projects and funding for those projects that will provide them with the know-how. So the know-how that you don't necessarily get from books and that are necessarily formally taught. So to get the know-how from other people that have that are part of that sector and from other people that have developed space systems in that sector. So what we've been continuously doing is providing the right environment and providing the right facilitations and the right opportunities for them to start developing those sectors. So when it comes down to the council, I think that's what I've been doing for the last 7 years. So providing the right environment for scientists, and that's what we've been doing in terms of the Emirates Mars mission, to allow them to flourish. So we plan to develop the first generation of UAE scientists with opportunities in every sector. We're not only talking about academia, we're not only talking about space, we're talking about every sector that exists in the economy, to have that idea of continuous research and development and to have that idea of continuously pushing the boundaries beyond what is taught and beyond what they've learned.
All right, well, let me, because everyone tends to not lose interest, but get confused when you talk about how this space program is going to make everything better. It's going to make the economy better. It's going to make healthcare better. It's going to create industries that don't exist. How do you see that happening? So, you know, for someone who doesn't see the link and doesn't understand what space technologies have to do with that, what is the link? Can you explain?
Space is usually at the boundaries of science and technology. It tests things at a very harsh environment, first off. If you're talking about technology, it tests things at the very boundaries of technology. Again, when you're talking about engineering, it encompasses all the fields of engineering in a single project. So you develop different fields, and so you develop electrical engineers, electronics engineers, computer engineers, and software engineers. You also develop mechanical and so on. So you can't get a project of such a magnitude that has actually a wide impact on various sectors of technology. When it comes to science, it uses, so because you're on the cutting edge of technology, you utilize a lot of sciences that are coming out of different sectors and implement them there. I think yesterday you quite eloquently put it, where you said that it was that the International Space Station, that was Omran. That was Omran.
But I'll take the credit.
So,
though. Where's Imran?
You can't take the credit for him.
He's
so our
not
project
here. It was
manager
me.
speaking yesterday.
I don't see him.
I don't know where he is.
It was me.
I usually put him
said
on
it.
the spot intentionally, and he's not here for that. Or he's hiding and he knows what we're going to do. So our project manager yesterday very specifically spoke about the International Space Station and how knowledge in medicine and knowledge in technologies and knowledge in different sectors actually helped space, and also agricultural. Right now they're planting things in space, and then that's going to come back and help the same sectors back here on Earth. So we need to think beyond direct, for example, touch, that I have to be physically touching this chair to be touching this chair, and think beyond the direct physical links between different sectors and between the different implications, and think also beyond the short-term results-oriented thinking in terms of getting back the results in, for example, funding in space directly. It's a gradual sort of, it's a gradual seeping into different sectors, and it's a form of understanding. We also sometimes talk about how, when you spoke about product assurance, and to just delve into that, when you're doing space systems, you have to adhere to strict manufacturing regulations, to strict design regulations. Because one, you're either designing for putting a human into space, so there's lives involved, or two, you're designing for a mission that costs millions upon millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, that you're going to send to space and you expect it to work. So you can't send it to space, and for basically you're burning your money in for it not to work. So there's this stringent and rigorous process that goes into designing space systems, and that can actually help in elevating the manufacturing sector in a country.
And does the UAE's small size and small population have anything to do with choosing the field? Is space labor intensive, or it's not? What is there any?
It's probably because it's not about the size of the UAE.
Okay.
I think it's about it being at the forefront of technological development. But in terms of the UAE, what the UAE has noticed is that space is a very collaborative platform. Lots of countries work on it together. There are still barriers to enter it, but you can find partners the same way that we have to exchange know-how, to not start from the very beginning, because it's for furthering science. So people won't always stop you and tell you, sorry, That's sort of our bread and butter. We're not going to share with you how we do that, because they still want people to further human knowledge in the science of space, or to further human knowledge about our solar system or even beyond. And that provides a sort of more collaboration for a small country that wants to develop its technology sector or its science sector. And I think it's a very smart initiative, that the investment that the UAE has placed in people to develop that sector, because, as I said before, you develop several different fields in just one project. So where else can you claim that you can do that?
Ladies and gentlemen, I do want this to be as interactive as possible, so if you do have questions, I'm just going to ask Sarah one more question, and then we can start taking questions from the audience. Sarah, do you find it hypocritical that some of the people who preach women empowerment only see the significance of your current post and your recent assignment as the head of the UAE Council for Scientists because you're a woman, and they don't, in many cases, they might not even know your achievements and how hard you've worked to get there. All they see is a woman in that position. And do you find that hypocritical that they emphasize that rather than emphasizing how you've excelled and you've beat everyone to that role?
I'm really glad you brought that, because that's a pet peeve of mine. I have never sat down for an interview or sat and spoken to somebody that has just met me and not gotten this question. How does it feel to be a woman in the field, or how does it feel to be the woman? What struggles did you go through? For me, that's quite an insulting question for myself, because it sort of insults my capabilities and what I've done for the last few years to get to where I am. I never get the question of, was it a struggle to work in a new sector and develop something that never existed before? That never comes up. So to me, it's quite counteractive to the women empowerment movement if we still do ask those questions, and I'd like to say that those questions come from women usually, because we're still adhering to the molds that have been imposed on, and we're still not acknowledging that we've reached beyond the point for asking for our rights. We've reached beyond the points for asking for equality. We've reached beyond the point for pursuing empowerment. We've gotten to a point where we are equally as competent, sometimes more, and we are providing. We are basically competing with men on different roles, so that we've accomplished what we've sought out to accomplish. And I think it's very good to start asking people, how did you get this post based on your capabilities, or how does it feel to struggle based on your capabilities, and not because you're a woman.
I agree with that. Does anyone want to ask Sarah a question? دكتورة تفضلي. Can we get our mic? تفضلي دكتورة.
البارحة لما شفت في البرنامج حديث مع سارة الأميري.
When I saw yesterday an interview with Sarah Al-Amiri, I went online and tried to know more about you. The problem with technology is that it prevents a personal interaction between human beings. But I hope that we can do more human interaction personally between me and you. As a matter of fact, everybody here is proud to be sitting with these young models and role models of scientists. And when the mission to space was announced, there was more than one type of reaction: admiration, wondering, non-belief, marginalization. All of this we felt in the news and in the media. To me, my wonder, any massive project or big one such as yours requires a high-quality scientific environment which prepares the abilities or capabilities for this mission. So where is the scientific environment? That's number one. Two, we're talking about scientists. Who are the scientists? Through the experience, or my scientific experience, which I've been through, we have thousands of doctors and thousands of engineers and chemists, etc. But they are not scientists, because a scientist is who started in scientific research and provided results which add value to humanity, and were able to reach with these results to international publications and not just local publication. This is the scale of who we call scientists around the world, and not just in the Arab region. So as your measurement, how do you qualify a person to become a scientist? Many times we hear economy from you as if economy is the motivation or the driver of everything, and I do not agree with this. There are humanitarian dimensions and educational dimensions. The economy is just one of these pillars, which could not necessarily lead every person to satisfaction of his life. Thank you very much. I'll answer in English. And then
How do you create that environment that allows for scientists to
Okay,
flourish?
so I'll speak with regards to space and how the environment was created for the space sector, to enable this mission to happen. What we get a lot of doubts from people. People thought that at the time of the announcement that it's something that just came out of a whim. It's something that has not been worked on for a long period of time. It is something that's been in the making for 10 years. There's been a team that's been working in the background, being prepared over the last 10 years, prior to even thinking of going to space. And I'll talk about the steps that was taken to create the right environment for them to flourish. The first step was and it was all project-based. So the first step, I'd call it Dubai Sat 1, because that's what it was. And it was a project that asked a group of young Emirati engineers that had recently graduated to work on shadowing a team of South Korean engineers that were developing Dubai Sat 1. And they managed to get the contribution of about 30% in development of that satellite. The next step, which we call Dubai Sat 2. And the reason we're using projects, because projects constrain you. You have something to deliver with a set amount of time, and there are specifications that you need to develop to. The second phase was developing Dubai Sat 2. Dubai Sat 2 was a joint development where we worked together again with our South Korean partners. They were developing their parts that they were in charge of. We were developing the parts that we were in charge of, and we were merged together as a single team working together towards the goal of developing Dubai Sat 2. Our third and final sort of capstone project is currently Khalifa Sat, which we're developing completely on our own. So 100% team of UAE nationals have worked on the design of Khalifa Sat. And with that, so that is the development of the human aspect. Along the same time that we were developing Dubai Sat 1, Dubai Sat 2, and almost at the beginnings of Khalifa Sat, we thought of having, okay, you need to have specific infrastructure to actually develop those satellites in. You need to have your own labs, you need to have your own clean rooms that you can manufacture those satellites in. And that was working alongside developing the engineers. One thing I'd like to point out actually on that process is from the beginning of Dubai Sat 1, we never said that we didn't. So we were in a very small building in Al Khwanij without an antenna, with barely room and space for people to sit in their offices, but we still managed to develop 2 satellites without having the right facilities in place. So we thought of developing the human aspect. That's harder. Buildings and concrete and everything else is easier to do. And then we took the next step of, once we had a team there that actually could set the requirements of what their buildings should look like, what their facilities should look like, we then went on and developed those facilities. So that's the question of how do you develop the environment. So I hope this case study is actually, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you all the time. I hope this case study is actually replicated across different sectors in the UAE.
Sure. I think the second part was how do you define a scientist, and then finally what is the link between the economy and.
Okay. So in terms of how do you define scientists, it's exactly how you put it very well on what scientists are defined globally, and we need to get to that point. So I do agree that we do have scientists. We have scientists in academia. But there are scientists across the world that go into different sectors, that develop different sectors, that do the fundamental research that we require to develop different sectors. We need scientists, for example, in transport. We need scientists that are, so we currently do have scientists in energy, but we need scientists that are working in energy in companies that are currently producing energy. So we need to have that the fundamental scientists that are working on furthering the boundaries of the area of science that they're working on beyond the academic sector, and to provide them with the right tools and with the right vision for the country. So whenever you're working towards something, you're working towards a goal or you're working towards an objective. And having objectives clearly set, not only in the development of the country, but also in the development of the science sector of the country, of the technology sector of the country, and the development of, and where we see each of the sectors that we have furthering away from the boundaries and confines that we have, provides more opportunity for scientists to exist other than where they are classically confined right now, and that increases, I think, the number of scientists that we have, and that's part of what the council is meant to do. Not only to stick to what we traditionally think of our fields where scientists are meant to be in, so meant to be in within the confines, for example, of a college doing their research, but they can be everywhere and they can develop everywhere. And that takes a long time to do because it takes a long time to produce scientists.
Excellent point. Knowledge-based economy, this is going to be great for everyone. What is the link? Why is the economy getting...
So why we're focusing on economy, and we always talk about the benefits of it in economy, because unfortunately, that's how the value of anything is measured. And I completely do not agree with it. But we speak that language because that's how the value of any sector is measured. How much return does it have? How does it impact the growth and development of the economy? But so what's going underground, the team is very aware of the social implications of what they're doing. They are very aware of the implications on the wider society and the long-term development of the country and the sustainability of the country. So we're not talking about economic sustainability, but the continuous sustainability of the country and the continuous self-development of the country moving forward. So there are a lot of programs that are undergoing. I think a very good example of that is what Ibrahim and his team is doing under the context of the Emirates Mars mission. We always say that the Emirates Mars mission is not that piece of metal that is going to space. It's not about that. It's not about, it is also about the science that's going to happen, but it's not only about that. It's about stimulating the science and technology sector in the UAE. It's about providing people with that larger ambition, that there's something quite larger than what you think, quite further than the confines of our own planet, that you can work towards. So it provides a lot of possibility and expands a lot of people's horizons. So these are the social implications and the societal implications of furthering and developing the country.
Excellent. Do we have any other questions?
السلام عليكم. معكم هنا الزرعوني أختي أميرة.
My name is Hana Zaraouni. We are very proud of you, Sarah. And you reached this position. I have three questions. Now, children, let's say children, they are the basis of the society. It's very important to be part of your work is to enhance the love of science and scientific research in our children. I was very happy when a child was 8 years old and I asked him, what is your dream? He said, I want to be a scientist. And this definitely is through your work, and because you're working on this platform and you represented the society of the UAE as scientists and the importance of scientific research and the development of the society. That's number one. I really hope that you are doing something to participate or more to be more involved in schools. If you have a question, please, and make it brief in your question. Second question, the nanometer technology. And this is the future technology. We're hearing about it and reading about it. It's a part of your work. This is something very important. And we have to be up to date with, of course, working on the future and nanometer. Let's say it is the future. Third, we hope that we change the mindset of our current society, that scientific research, they consider it as something simple or subtle. Well, actually, it is not. It's something that requires years of work, and only 2 to 5% of our funding is on scientific research here in the Arab world. But of course, in the West, they spend a lot, and there's a massive budget for that. And as you mentioned, the economy is the most important, because the more scientific research there is, the countries, of course, develop in order to stop and enhance, or take a pause and enhance our position in the Arab region. Scientific research must be granted a big financial support, otherwise we will not be among the developed countries. Finally, I'm very proud of you, Sarah, and we are sure that you represent us as UAE women and Arab women, and hopefully you will achieve great things and you elevate the level of scientific research in the Arab region.
Rephrase it. Actually, that's a very good question. Sarah, okay. Sarah, you a while back were just an engineer student at the American University of Sharjah. Did you ever imagine that you would be leading the science team going to Mars? Mars is hard. The space is hard. Research and development is a difficult field, and it takes many years and a lot of money. What is your answer to that?
So I'll try to answer all questions because they just gave us a 7-minute key.
Okay.
Okay.
I have more questions.
All right. You have more questions? Yeah. Audience is more important. First off, thank you for your comments. In terms of the youth, it's very important. We completely understand to change the ideology of how important research and development is, and to change the ideology of how important science is, and I'm talking about science and not applied science, we need to start with a young age. I point to this guy sitting here to my left. It is his job to do that. So there is a team that is continuously thinking and working of how to gain wider exposure to the students that are there. And I think have the entire Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, having youth as a fundamental part. I think the mean age at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center is about 27 or 28. Is a good example of how possible these things are. So the team is working on that, and we will continue to put efforts, personal efforts, into furthering science and technology. There was one question with regards to research and development spending. Research and development spending here is not 2% of GDP. It's 0.18%, I think, if not less. And increasing spending, research and development spending percentage by GDP is strongly linked with economic development of the country. So it is there. And I think with the push and the recent changes of the government here in the UAE, there will become more emphasis on developing the idea of research and development, and appreciation of how long research and development would take.
All right. Can we take one more question from the audience? And please, a question, not... All right, there we go.
Hello, I'm Chiara Paleri from Deals Television channel. I just wanted to ask you, I understand that for you collaboration between men and women is something, of course, very important. But how do you deal when you encounter competition between women in the same board? I think in firms like this, I suppose most of the people believe in cooperation over competition, but in a scientific field, I have the feeling that it may be the case that it's more competition over cooperation. So how do you cope with that, and what do you think are the lessons that culturally you could teach a multicultural team?
Competition. Mm-hmm. Okay. Within the context, I'll speak in both within the context of an organization, and also speak to outside the context. So within the context of organizations, within the context of organizations, I strongly believe, and this is what we practice, that knowledge is not owned by a single individual. I haven't faced a form of competition in competing towards the same research or doing the same kind of work. So having an environment that actually has that idea that knowledge is not owned by the individual, knowledge is owned by the organization, and the individuals in the organization are there to support one another, to allow one another to grow, because an individual that is not within a team cannot have a significant contribution in any field. It's the team that has a larger impact, and it's always the team. I always believe that whenever it's anyone that's speaking here from the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, it is always speaking in the voice of the team and always speaking in sort of the impact of or the shared knowledge that the team has together. Otherwise, we wouldn't grow in such I think a small sector that has.
I thought we were just using royal pronouns.
No, we're not using royal pronouns for no reason. Yeah, there's nothing royal about it. When we say we actually mean that there's an entire back office of a team that has worked so hard on developing things. There is the also aspect when you're talking about larger. I think a very good friend of ours coined this, and it's healthy competition. So it's cooperation, but competing towards bettering a sector or competing towards bettering an area of research. So that's the form of competition I believe in, one that picks up all entities to go forward together, and they're all developing a certain niche in that area.
All right. So I have one last question for you. Many decades from now, when Imran allows you to retire.
That's a very good point. When Imran allows me to retire.
What is Sarah Amiri's legacy, and what do you want to leave behind?
I'd like to see the UAE's spending on GDP to be amongst the highest, if not the number one in the world. We love the number one. So I'd really love that in that index of percentage of spending on R&D, the UAE is number one in the world in a few decades. There is a very strong culture of research and development, very strong culture of science here in the UAE, and that our private sector is very well established and is actually producing things for high technologies outside. I want us to reverse the coin where we are very good users of technology and not producers of technology, to very good users of technology and very good producers of technology.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, this was in conversation with Sarah Al-Amiri. Thank you very much for attending and interacting.
Thank you.